All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Gregor. I am the maintainer of the JavaScript as a contractor for GitHub. And OctoGit is like the official SDK for all of GitHub's APIs, and I maintain all the JavaScript parts of it. And today I'll be talking about how you can copy an existing repository with issues, labels, milestones, comments, and assignees. And the use case for this is testing. So if you write any kind of GitHub automation and you want to test it, you don't necessarily want to test it on your real production repositories. So you create test repositories or even a test organization. And then you don't really want to go in and manually create the environment you need to run your script or your app or whatever it is. So in this episode, we will walk through how you can automate this. And our motivation for today's episode is that we want to look into automating issue transfers, like XAVT asked about the issue transfer APIs and how we can utilize it most efficiently and work around problems with abuse limits and so on. So this is something I want to talk about next week on Thursday. And today I kind of want to create a script which makes it easier for us to build the actual script for the issue transfers. All right, so what are template repositories? That's something I want to start out with. XAVT created a test organization for us. And a test organization has two repositories, one for the source and one for the target. And they're both template repositories. So I should be able to create a new template based on this repository. There's also a UI for it, but it's not shown because there is no code in this repository yet. But basically, if there was a README and other files in it, and I would use it as a template, then when I create a new repository, all these files will be copied as well. Actually, let's add a quick template to this. So, quick code to this, sorry. Okay. So git clone the template issue target repository, and then let's create issues target, a markdown file, git add, initial commit, and push it. Let's make this a little bigger. So now I created the README file, and now I see this button, use this template. And now when I generate a new repository in my own account, or in this repository, test 1.2, then it will just copy all the files that existed in the source repository, the one that I just created. Okay, so that is great, and I can utilize the same feature from the REST APIs and GraphQL API as well. But what it does not, and it makes a lot of sense, is it does not also copy all the issues. So And for our use case, we don't want only to create a repository, but we do want to copy all the issues. We want to copy all the labels we need. We want to copy all the milestones, the collaborators, and then set the assignees and so on. All right. So that is what templates are. Now let's create a template. Let's create a repository based on a template. Okay. Let me go in my projects directory and I just start out with a new folder and call it copy repository. Let's go in there and npm init it. So this creates my package JSON and install AutoKit, of course. And then we can also git init. So now we have git. Okay, and let's create a README file. Okay. Copy repository, and this is a CLI to copy a repository with metadata such as issues, labels, etc. Okay, we can add a reference to this issue here. And we license it as ISC because why not? Okay. Let me add the license file because without a license we don't do open source, right? So the license file and the year is 2021. My name is Gregor Martinez. Okay. And then I just put a warning up top that this is working. This is work in progress. Okay. So git add initial commit and we have to create a repository. So I just used the GH CLI, GitHub's official new CLI to create a new repository. Repo create, yes. Description, let's copy it from our README file. It's public. Yes, let's add the Git origin. Okay. So here's our repository with the README we just created. Okay, so in this repository, I will create the code for the CLI. Okay. So let's call it CLI JS, and I will make this a module, because when I use a module, I can use top-level async await, which is really helpful. So I don't require, instead I import AutoKit from AutoKit, and then const AutoKit is new AutoKit with my GitHub token. Okay, let's just check that this works. So I load myself with AutoKit request get user, await. And this is what modules gives me. I can just use the await. I don't need to wrap it in any async function. And then console log authenticated as user login. Okay. Now I want to get the hang of using the built-in terminal because it's so much nicer when streaming. Let's make this all a little bigger here. Okay. Node CLI.js, authenticate as GR2M. Okay, that's perfect. Now, create a new repository based on a template. And the owner template is another practice organization, I think. Let me double check that. Okay. And then the repo, well, actually, let's change this in a moment. So this one is called template issues source. Okay. And actually, I want to rename this to the prefix of template. Okay. So let's see how to create a new repository. So AutoKit, I can use request or I can use rest repos create, which is create for organization, I think. Or is it orgs create repo? Okay. I'll create in org. All right. So org is actually the owner will be the same. So we can just say the org is the owner. And then the new repo name will be test and then some random number. So let's use the current timestamp. So I think the parameter for the new repository is called name. And then there is I thought I could just pass okay, maybe it's I'll create using template. Okay. Interesting. So let's see what parameters we have to set here. Yes, so we set name as well, but we don't set org, we set owner, and then template owner and template repo. So template owner is also owner, and template repo is our template repo here. Let's move this to the top. Okay, let's see what else. I think that's it. Okay, let's call this new repo name just to be more clear. And then this is the repository we create. So you can say console log repository created at, and then repository HTML URL. All right, let's run it. Boom, nice. Oh, that's nice to see that it just works. Oh no, something went wrong. What? Did I find a bug here? Huh. Well, maybe because there is no content here yet. That could be. Let's just make sure that we have that. So I just create a temporary repository, git clone in here, and then again, this time it's, oops, sorry, issues. Oh, okay, I haven't changed into the directory, so now I can commit it with initial commit. Okay, so now our template repository has content. So I hope that this will resolve the problem of GitHub. Yep, looks good. So we created a new repository with a random name based on a template. So far, so good. So to recap, I'm using Octahit here, of course, and I authenticate with a personal access token that I configured in my environment, so I don't need to show it to use. Then I create a new repository using a template here. And I log out the URL. So that's it. I think that's all of part 1. Now in part 2, I want to retrieve all the relevant information from the template repository that we then can use to create all the resources we want, like issues and comments and so on, in part 3. And I want to do it with GraphQL. And GraphQL API by GitHub is perfect for this because basically we only need to send a single request. And there are some challenges with it as well, and we can talk about it for a moment, but it shouldn't be a problem for the scope of today's shows. So GraphQL also has a graphical design called Graphical. And even cooler is that there is a Electron app that I can just install. And I already did that. And I already prepared a little query for what we need. So here in Graphical, the graphical user interface for GraphQL, I just have to define the endpoint, which for GitHub is API github.com/GraphQL. And then in the HTTP headers, I configured my authentication token again. And then I can just start querying. So in here, I can query whatever you want. I can query organizations, and I could query the current viewer and log out my login, for example. And then I would retrieve that information. So what we want is for a specific repository, which I have parameterized with query variables here. So for the template issues source repository in the another practice organization owner, I want to load collaborators. I want to load milestones with the title, descriptions, whether the milestone is close or not, when it's due on, and the URL for debugging. So I can quickly go in here and then see what is behind the data that we're seeing. And then labels. So these are the global labels that we are retrieving. And right now, let's see, they're like the standard labels, documentation, and so on. But there's also first label, another label defined that we can find here. Like here's the another label that was created, and there was like a first label here. So we retrieve all that information. Then we retrieve all the issues, or better, just the first 100, which is the maximum that GitHub permits us to request. And in terms of restrictions and challenges with GraphQL, this is it. Like if we needed more than 100, then we would need to paginate, and paginate with GraphQL is a whole other dilemma. All right, so we load all our issues that we can see here. The first issue, second issue, and so on. We load the assignees, the milestone, the labels, and also the first 100 comments for it. And that's basically it. So all I need to do now is to just copy the whole query and oops. I will actually put this into a separate file. So retrieve data GraphQL and just put it in here so we get nice formatting and everything. And then we can import this data. So we will use import fs the promises API read file and retrieve all data. Actually, before we create a repository, let's do the retrieve of the data, because if it fails, then we don't have a repository created that we need to clean up. So let's say the query and then await read file retrieve data GraphQL. Let's log it out, see if it works. Oops. So this is buffer by default, but we want UTF-8 instead. Okay, so this is our query. And now we can do await GitHub, AutoKit, graphical, and then pass the query. And we need to pass the variables we want, right? So owner and repo. So probably we will need to move these further up because we will already need them now. Or even further up because it's kind of a configuration. And then init AutoKit here, and then retrieve all data. All right. So the owner is the template. No, the owner. Okay, we have that already. And then repo is the template repository name. And just as a reminder, these match the variables that I defined in the query function. And I could call them whatever I want. I could call the repo variable name to match the repository node in GraphQL, but I use repo because this is what it's used in the REST API, and that way the APIs will look more consistent. Okay, now let's console log results and stringify it so we see all of it. Okay. All right. So we retrieve all our information that we need. In the repository, there are collaborators, milestones, labels, and issues. Where is it? Okay. So let's destruct this right away. So repository, and then in the repository we have, again, collaborators, milestones, labels, and issues. Okay, and let's just log them out one by one, just to make sure we have all we want. And labels. Okay, let's start with that. Okay, so that looks good. Milestones, labels. Okay, and then because this is how GraphQL works, is they don't directly give us an array. They give us an object with an edges key and an edges, and the edges key is an array, and each array item has a node item, and nodes is a shortcut for that. And the value of nodes is what we want. In some cases, we want the edges because the connection between the repository and the nodes we want is also relevant. Like when I use collaborators, I don't only want the username and ID, I also want to know what permission does this user have in the repository, and this information is on the edge. Okay, so I think I will actually call this result after all, and then say const collaborators, and then say result repository edges, and then map, and then return an object that I want, which is permission, edge permission, and then let me see the GraphQL query again, just the login. Okay. So login, so edge node login. Okay, and let's do the same for milestones. Collaborators, edges, and then milestones, nodes. So here I just want to have node to be returned. Like this. I think that's all I want. I don't need to further clean it up. And the same with labels. Let's see how that works. Cannot read collaborators of undefined. Repository, not quite. Oops, sorry. And not label, but labels. Okay. So our collaborators now look good, an array with only the information we want. Milestones also an array with only information we want. And now also with labels. Okay. Okay, next up is a little bit more complicated because it's the issues. So const issues is result repository issues nodes, and within these nodes we want to clean up assignees, milestone, not just assignees and labels, because again I want to get rid of the node thing. So issue notes. This. Okay, what else you want to have? Actually, we can do the following. We can get all the properties we want, but then override the one where we want to change the format. So assignees, this is okay. Labels and comments, we also want to override. And I think that should be it. Now with only the relevant information. Yep. So first issue, we have assignees. Let's log out the whole thing. Okay. All right, so we have our title. The assignees just with login, the milestone just with title. Labels just with name, and then comments with the author. And the body, and the URL again is kind of just for debugging. All right. Now we have all the information we want to create in the new repository, but it turns out there is one challenge. And the challenge is when I create a new repository and I want to recreate these issues, I want to retain the authorship. Like I want to recreate this issue in the new test repository as XAVT. And for that, I would need an authorization access token by XAVT to do so. And that is a little problematic because I do not want personal access token by XAVT because it would give me access globally to all of XAVT's repositories and so on. And I'm pretty sure that they wouldn't want me to have such a token anyway. And to work around it, we can use user-to-server tokens. And user-to-server tokens are unlike OAuth tokens as personal access tokens and like the OAuth tokens you get from OAuth apps, because they are not only limited by the user permissions that get granted with the OAuth flow, but also by a GitHub application. And what I did is I registered a GitHub app here. So you can do that in your own account or in your organization account. And then give the application whatever permissions you will need. So in this case, let me see, we gave access to administration because we need to create repositories, and we gave read and write access to issues in order to create issues and comments. And then I needed to use the OAuth flow. So I need to define a callback for the OAuth redirect, which is a URL on a Netlify app that I will show you in a moment. And for webhooks, I just disable them altogether because it's not a GitHub app that will act on events happening in repositories where it's installed on. I will slowly use it for these user-to-server tokens. So when I open this app that I deployed to Netlify, I can simply enter the credentials here for my GitHub app. And I will just do that now. And then I will not show you the client ID. Because it is a sensitive credential. Okay, so with the client ID and the client secret, what will happen is these credentials will be stored in local storage, and then it will start the overflow using this ID. So I think I should be able to record all of this. Persist logs. Okay, let's see what's happened. Okay, so what happened is it opened the login authorization URL, and it didn't show anything because I already granted access earlier. And then it went back to this callback URL that you've seen me configured, and it passed this one-time code. And then it used this one-time code to exchange for a user-to-server token. And this user-to-server token is somewhat sensitive, but you cannot do anything as myself, as my GR2M user account, outside of what the app can do. So you could go in and use that and, mess around with the repositories, but maybe please just don't do that. And also, I can just revoke all user tokens. And with that, the token you just saw will no longer be valid. And I just create another one, and I won't show you this one. Well, actually, I can show you the whole flow now, because this time I revoked all access tokens. So this time I see the screen where I'm asked to grant access to this another practice org tokens application. It shows me what it will be able, that it can act as myself. Okay, and now you see this token again, but whatever. All right, let's go back to coding. So I will now use a local environment variable. So we'll use, let's say, GitHub token and set it to the token that you've just seen. And then I will install .env. And import .env and run .env config. So now we will use our local token. And let's create a new repository again. But this time, let me try to create it in my own organization. And let's see what happens. So I am authenticated as myself. Oh, and it did create. That should not happen. Did I misspell? No. Well, let's just call it user to server token, or like GitHub user to server token. Huh. I am very confused. I wonder if this is a bug, because it really should not be able to do that. Okay, let's try something else. Let's log. Actually, we can just go in here and then process exit after. And I wanna const data and then octokit request a repository that I know is private. Which is sandbox private. Okay. And then we'll just console log data HTML URL. Oh, and I have to await it. So it says not found here. But I'm pretty sure that this repository exists. So you see this repository exists and it should have access to it. So that's interesting. You can create a repository outside of the installation of an app if you're using a user server token. I think this is a bug and I will report it to GitHub and I will again invalidate all my tokens because I don't want you to create random repositories in my account. All right, let's create another one, and this time I will not show it to you. Actually, I have to still configure it in my .env file. Okay. All right. So we can get rid of this part. Okay. So we retrieve all the information we want. We create the new repository. And now we want to go in and add the collaborators and then add the milestones and labels as we need them. Okay. Actually, we can also just invite collaborators as we need them. So let's keep track of that. Of the ones we already have. Okay, let's go through all issues. And now we want to transfer. No, we don't want to transfer. What am I talking about? This is next show. And this show, I just want to create it. So octokit rest issues create. And owner repo is the repository name. And then title is issue title and body. new issue. Okay, console log. New issue created at new issue HTML. Oops. HTML URL. Let's see if this works. Oh, I still have this wrong owner here. 60. Oh wait, I forgot to wait. That's why. Okay, so here's the new issue that was created. Now, I don't yet, I asked what's their name? XAVT to create me a token, so I could retain their ownership, but I don't think I got it yet. No. All right. So for now, I will just create all these issues as myself. But basically, what we will need to do is first, we will need the author. I didn't get that yet. So let's add it here and make sure that it works. So we have the title body and we want the author login. Okay, so this works now. Let's update our query in here. So now we have the author. So creating new issue based on is, okay, so issue HTML, not URL, and then issue author login. Okay, so it's creating all. Ooh, that is not right. We're creating them. What? In the template? Oh no. New issue created. No, okay, we are all good. I thought for a moment we added the issues in the wrong place. All right. So let me think. I will ignore this authorship problem a little bit because it's a little bit of a sinkhole. I will get back to it either later or next week. But basically, what we need is a set of tokens for all the users. Oh, you know what? Let's just do it. So first, I need to log in as another user, and I have a test GitHub user for stuff like this, which is gr2m test. And now in here, I will open the create user to server token Netlify app, and I will need the credentials again. So let's go back to my app. Where is it? GitHub apps, here we go. Client ID. Okay. And then client secrets. Okay, I'm going through the OAuth flow now and received a new token and add it to my .env file. Okay. Let's get back here. So I changed something and this is now, I now get multiple tokens. So I renamed this to GitHub tokens, and it's now a space separate list of tokens. And here I will just use the first token. For this OctoKit instance, but I also want to iterate through all the tokens that I have. Okay, let's do that. Okay, load users just to know that whom we have. Or authors to make it more clear maybe. And then for off token of tokens, I want to basically do the same thing as here, only I will think I can set my own authorization header. I should know this. All right, let's see. So we no longer need this, and then I will do authors, user login as token. Okay, let me just end here. You don't need to create all these repositories and test issues all the time. And see if it works. No, it does not work. Well, let's do that then. Const author OctoKit is new OctoKit auth token. And then I don't need this anymore. And then I will not set the token, I will set the whole OctoKit instance on the object, like this. What am I doing wrong? I have two tokens. Huh. Oh. Yep. All right. So this works now as expected. Okay, so now we want to go in and create the issue based on the author. Issue author login, and then use that OctoKit instance to create the issue. And then if author OctoKit is not set, then, well, for now we would just log a warning. We should probably throw an error, but yeah. Console log authentication token missing in GitHub tokens for this user. Maybe a warning, and then continue instead of creating an issue. Okay, so that is fine. Let's run the thing. Token missing, new issue created. Okay, so just to easier test it for now, let me fall back to gr to test. Oops. Let's just do it like this. Okay. You know what? Let's make it better like this. And then, okay, console log. Creating issue as instead, and this is object values authors. No, keys 0. So I will just fall back to creating the token as myself. Object is not defined. Oh, all right. Let's try again. Rest of undefined. Yeah, well. Yeah, authors is not an array, it's an object, so I need to access it by key. So here are the messages. So here is the issue that should be created as XAVT, but isn't. So that works. Okay, now we need to make sure that all the labels exist in a target repository. And I think the easiest for that would be to just iterate through all labels and ignore conflict errors. So I think I will just do that. So we want to create milestones and labels, and we want to invite the collaborators. Oh wait, yeah, I wanted to only create the labels that I actually needed. But I feel like this is an optimization that I can do later. So before creating all the issues, I will iterate through all the other stuff here. So for cons collaborator of collaborators, and then do our magic in here. Okay, so I can do octokit, rest, repos. I don't know, it's add, oh, it's add collaborator, cool. So owner, repo, and the owner is the same, and the repo is the repository name. And what's next? I need to invite the username, and I need to set the permission. So collaborator login, and permission is collaborator permission. Let's see if that worked. If that works. Const. $S invited to repository with permission so. Okay. So collaborator login invited to repository name with collaborator permission. Okay, next, milestones. Actually, don't know if I get any HTML URL here. Oh yeah, I do. Okay, let's add that actually to the log output. Okay. So cons data equals await octokit rest repos create milestone, no, create issues, create milestone. That is better. Okay, let's copy this part. Owner repo. Okay. And now I think we can just add all the properties from the milestone. Milestone created at, okay. Let's say milestone title, and then data HTML URL. Okay, let's continue. So here with labels, now we have to look out for conflicts, because repositories get created with default templates, default labels, and if you try to recreate them, you will get an error. Okay, so create and then Just pass in all the label information, and we will wrap it in a try catch error label. Let's see if there's a data HTML URL. No, there is none. Okay, so we don't really need this. Oops. And just say label name. Lame. Okay. So, and now if error, let's look up the REST API documentation here. Okay, comments, labels, create a label. And then down here, there are possible responses. So it could be a 422 or a 409. Well, we shall see. Let's just log out the error for now and exit. I'm not sure if the error code is 409 or 422 if the label already exists. Okay, well, YOLO. Let's see what bugs we have. Line 75. Huh. Interesting. It looks like there is actually no response data. Yep, data is undefined. So I think the OpenAPI specification is wrong. So let's go here to repositories, add a collaborator, repository collaborator. So this is a put, and it tells, oh, okay, it's already, that's interesting. So I think the OpenAPI spec is correct, but OctoKit is not handling this possibility. Interesting. So ideally, data should be flagged as optional in TypeScript with an explanation. So basically, if data exists, continue. Otherwise, let's log something else. Is already a collaborator on. Okay, let's try again. Okay, now we got some kind of error. Cookies must be enabled. What is happening here? GitHub.com? What on earth? Oh, I know what's going on. Okay, so the problem here is that milestones include the URL property. So, oh, you know what? I just remove it from the query. I don't need it in the query. So basically, all these properties, yeah, let's just remove them. That will solve our problem, I think. Because if I set the URL property here, it actually overrides the internally used route. So that really should not happen. Okay. Closed and due on are not permitted. What? When I create a milestone, I cannot set due on? Okay, I think I understand. Okay. So closed, due on, and everything else is milestone data. Okay. Due on is due on. It's just spelled differently. And I guess I cannot directly mark it as closed. So basically, if closed to do, well, I can just try to do it right now, actually. Updates, milestone, we will need these. And then what else? Milestone number will be the data number. Yep. And then state will be closed. Okay. Milestone closed. All right. So we need to create a milestone first with the right due on property. And then if the milestone is closed in the source repository, we need to manually close it with a second request after. Okay, let's move on. Due on is not a string. When I create the milestone, I might need description. Let me see what graphical gives us here for the milestones. Oh, it's all right. You know what? We just do it all manually. So title is milestone. Title. Due on is if milestone due on, then pass it, otherwise just set it to undefined. The same with description. What else are we getting from milestones? Closed. Okay, that's it. So we no longer need this at all. This is due on. And milestone closed. Close milestone. Okay, we probably have similar issue here. Let's see what we will get for the label. No, there are no null values, they're just empty strings as expected. Okay. Here, this is what I wanted. It already exists and it's a 422. Okay. So if error status equals 422, label already exists. We are good. Continue. For all other errors, we should throw it because then something weird happened. Okay. Based on oh, okay. Well, I removed the URLs there. So this all looks pretty good. Let's see what we got. So we have our new test repository. We created the issues, and you can also see the 5th issue was actually created as gr2m test. So my whole token magic works. I just need to add a token by XABT. Then let's see, we have our milestone here, and we have our labels, including the another label and first label. So that is good. The last thing is to add comments. And we basically need to do a similar thing like here. Now for off, comment, issue comments. And let me see. Author login, okay. So instead of issue author login, it's now comment author login, creating new comment as, okay. We don't have it, then creating comment as instead. Okay, and then we basically need to do the same thing here instead. New comment created add, and instead of creating an issue, wait, what is going on? Okay, I don't get the type ahead now. Let me just issues create comments. Okay, so it's owner repo, and then it's issue number, which we should get here. Data new issue. Okay. Number. And then body is comment body. Okay, let's go back to the author AutoKit and let's see if this works. By the way, you will get in trouble if you create too many issues, too many comments, because these are resources that create notifications. And what AutoKit does by default is it has special throttle settings for all REST API endpoints that create resources, which also create notifications, which is why this whole script is going a little bit slow, but it basically implements all the recommended best practices. I think it waits 3 seconds in between requests that create entities that also create notifications. All right, let's see if that worked. I'm not sure. One of the issues has comments. Oh, here. Fifth issue. Oh. Here also you see the user to server token in action. You can see that this is not just me. It also has this little icon of the app, and it annotates the issue that it was created by this application. So this is how it's also shown in the UI. That is different, but that's a difference that we can accept when creating this test. Repositories. So I think that with that, we're done. Let me check one more time if I got maybe a token here somewhere. Okay, it did not. So we did retrieve. We created the issues. Oh, but we also created the comments. But now we also have to assign the labels and issues and assignees. So that's the last thing we need to do. Okay. So I'm not actually sure. I think when creating an issue, you cannot directly assign a milestone and labels as you can in the GitHub UI. These are two different operations for the API. Let me see. So we're creating the issue here. I don't think I can set like... Okay. We are losing our... let's see. I think I can do something like type AutoKit to get the proper types for this. Nice. Well, that's great to know. So let's do the same thing here. Okay, so now we get... Oh no, we can. That's awesome. Cool. So we want to set assignees, milestones, and labels. Issue assignees. Issue labels and issue milestone. Okay. Now let me go back to graphical and see how we are getting all this. So we need, I think for a milestone, it must be the milestone number. It doesn't exactly tell me, so let's get back to the REST reference for issues. and milestone. Yeah, it must be the number. So because we create the milestones in the same order as they exist in the source, I think the numbers will remain the same. So we can just say milestone number here, and it should just work. And because these two are no longer in sync, I will just add it here. So now we have the milestone number. And for assignees, I'm pretty sure we use the logins. And for labels, I'm pretty sure we use the label names and not the IDs. Okay. Okay, so if issue milestone, then we set it to issue milestone number. Otherwise, we set it to undefined. And let's see, for the assignees, we get the array of logins. So we should just be able to say issues assignees and issue labels actually, right? Oh no, we have to map them to user login and map the label to labeled name. Okay, so that looks good. Labels. To issue labels and assignees. Logins, okay. Issue assignees. All right. Here goes nothing. Oops. Let's open the source and find, for comparison, the labels. Okay, so the first issue has label and a milestone and an assignee. Okay, cool. Let's see if it's worked. Issue links. What? Oh, map. All right. Okay, this all seems to be working. Lots of room for optimization, of course, but this looks good. So this is our new repository with basically the same issues. When I go back and forth, it looks exactly the same, only of course the author is me instead of XABT, but this will be fixed as soon as I retrieve a token from XABT. All right, and I would say that concludes today's episode. I'm glad we got through this today. Thank you all for watching live or later on YouTube. If you have any other questions, then The issue is on my GR2L help desk repository number 16. You can post any questions right in here, even if the issue is closed. I have some other shows coming up. And on Monday, I will continue working on automating this repository, and I will implement automated scheduled tweets for each show, so I don't have to do that manually anymore. And on Tuesday at 11 a.m., I'm invited to a show hosted by GitHub with Andrea Griffiths. And it's called 30 Minutes to Merge, and we will be talking about GitHub automation and probably mostly actions. So I will talk for about 30 minutes. And after that, there will be a Q&A, so you can ask me all the questions you have. And that's all I got for today. Thank you so much, and I will see you on Monday.